It's about the restoration of our republic. We want to educate, encourage, enable the power. We stand for integrity, honesty, self-reliance, self-defense, and most importantly, no compromise on our foundational principles. This is America's Voice Now.
Find America's Voice Now on Facebook and at americasvoicenow.org. Here's Michael Evans.
Good morning, America. You're listening to America's Voice Now. My name is Michael Evans. I'll be your host this morning. Appreciate you joining with us. We have, over the last week I did a special about the total number of generals that have been relieved of duty for a lot of questionable reasons. I think the real issue here is, and the conclusion that I draw, is that they are being removed because they are refusing to participate and or acquiesce to what they see going on in our nation. And word out this morning is that, or yesterday, I should say, over the weekend, was that the commander of the largest base in Japan has been relieved for a rather unspecified claim of lack of confidence. Now, the investigation's been ongoing since June 7th. Colonel Eric Tilley was suspended from his job as commander of the U.S. Army garrison in Japan. And alleged misconduct, but they won't specify what. In fact, Major Boozer, commander of the U.S. Army in Japan, and I Corps, officially relieved Tilley on Friday for, quote, lack of confidence based on the results of the inquiry. When he was asked for more details, he said it would be inappropriate to make public the allegations because the investigation did not lead to findings of criminal misconduct. That's a rather disturbing post or statement. The problem here is that generals are routinely being relieved, and they are in some of our most critical and crucial locations around the nation, around the world, I should say. The real problem here, folks, is that these people are being relieved because they refuse to participate in what they see as the literal stripping and tearing apart of our nation. And I don't think anyone would be able to look at these men and say that all of these people, when we see the number of whistleblowers that are being removed or being persecuted and prosecuted, and then we look at the issue of all of these generals being relieved of command, not just generals, by the way, but lower echelon, but still senior executive staff and military positions around the nation, we have to be deeply concerned, because what it tells us is that these individuals are part and parcel of everything that the Obama administration does not want to see under its watch. Our founders were very clear about a number of issues that we really need to be cognizant of. I posted it up on our Facebook page this morning, and I'll put it up on our website as well later on. But I found a quote from John Hancock that I thought was appropriate and telling. If you've ever looked at the Declaration of Independence, when he signed it, he's the one whose signature sits so large and bold on the face of it. And after he signed his name, and they used, of course, that very flowery, very formal-looking writing, he made a very interesting statement. After signing his name, he put down the quill and he said, "There. His Majesty can now read my name without glasses, and he can double the reward on my head." by his signing of that declaration, Hancock knew that he was forever declaring himself to be an enemy of the most powerful tyrant, the most mighty tyrant that existed in the world at that time. So I would encourage you to read again or hear again what he had to say. Because by that statement, he declared himself to be the mortal enemy of tyranny. And he understood and knew the consequences of that action. He said, "There, His Majesty can now read my name without glasses, and he can double the reward on my head." He knew that he was joining a list. He knew that he was effectively declaring himself an open enemy of tyranny. Jefferson later said, "I have sworn upon the altar of God eternal hostility against every form of tyranny over the mind of men." So the question is, where do you stand? Will you side with those who clearly understood the danger, the risk, the implications of what they were doing? I mean, these men had a lot to lose. They were wealthy. They were respected in their communities. They were in many cases, state legislators. They were the leaders of their given colony or state at the time. They were merchants. They had vast land holdings. And yet, they were willing to stand up and hold the tyrant accountable for his actions. It is our job, our responsibility, to stand up and do the right thing all the time. Not when it's convenient, not when it's risky or to avoid risk. Each one of us has an obligation to hold our government accountable. You know, I did an interview on the Survival Podcast with Jack Spirko, and one of the questions that was posted up on the site afterwards, because the listeners comment, was, what about the Constitution? In the sense that the Constitution is only a piece of paper, and I agree. The Constitution, the Bill of Rights, the Declaration of Independence, they're merely paper, and they cannot enforce themselves. It is our duty, our obligation, to do that in their place, to stand and understand the intent, the concept of liberty and freedom, and then to act upon that in a way in which we will be its defenders. George Washington, when he was drafting his first inaugural address, and remember, they asked him to be president, and he said, "I don't really want to do that." He had just fought a long and brutal and bloody war. He had watched literally thousands of his soldiers starve to death, freeze to death, and all he wanted was to go home to his farm and his plantations and just take a break. And they implored him and begged him to become the king. And he said, "Absolutely not. I'm no monarch." Over his own questions and concerns, against his own best interest, though, he decided that he would become the president and try to lead the nation forward in this brand new liberty and freedom that had been designated and declared. And in that draft, he wrote, "No compact among men can be pronounced everlasting and inviolable. And if I may so express myself, no wall of words, no amount of parchment can be so formed as to stand against the sweeping torrent of boundless ambition on one side, aided by the sapping current of corrupted morals on the other." And what he was saying was that it's not the duty and the obligation of the piece of paper to defend and enforce itself. The compact is among men. And men must be those who defend it, support it, continue it, and follow it. And we have woefully failed in our duty. It's our obligation to do the right thing, to stand up and defend that. Sam Adams in 1772, this is before now the Declaration of Independence. He said, "All men have a right to remain in a state of nature as long as they please. And in case of intolerable oppression, civil or religious, to leave the society they belong to and enter into another." You know, we are at a point where the path forward is no longer clear. It is no longer apparent. And the direction that our leaders, alleged leaders, would take us is into uncategorized, unknown, and frightful, dangerous territory. The simple truth is they don't have our interest at heart. And as a result, we are left with this dangerous position that we have to resist. We have to resist. We can't wait anymore. We're at a point in time in our history where we're going to either defend our nation and what it means and what it stands for, or we're going to allow it to descend into corruption and tyranny. And I believe that where we stand today is on the brink. We're on the precipice. And it won't take much before we collapse over the edge, if you will. We're already on the brink of that. You know, there was an article which I found on Cato Institute. And I'm going to find it for you. I had it posted up on Facebook, and from time to time I post things up on Facebook that evaporate. It disappears. And I find that very frustrating. You know, the other day, there was an article out there about how the that is really disturbing. It is completely gone. There was an article out about the fact that there was a Twitter account created in which people were posting up pictures of them standing there holding their cancellation letters. And over and over and over again, Twitter has canceled that account. It's very, very uncomfortable. When we see what's happening in our nation, I found the article. It's Cato Institute. It's Cato at Liberty. It's called the NSA Fig Leaf Act of 2013. This woman who wrote this article, Julian Sanchez, very, very good article. Just in time for Halloween, the Senate Intelligence Committee has produced fig leaf legislation that entrenches indiscriminate collection of Americans' phone and internet records. But they have dressed it up in the costume of a surveillance reform bill designed to ban such collection. The FISA Improvement Act does contain some mild but generally positive transparency measures. Somewhat ironically, given that the bill itself was marked up in secret. You know, secrets are a tyrant's way. That's a methodology of a tyranny, a mark of tyranny. There was a press release that came out and said that this bill and this act will prohibit the collection of bulk communication records under Section 215 of the USA Patriot Act, except under specific procedures and restrictions set forth in the bill, which would lead most people to believe that that's a good thing. This bill is good. Here's Ms. Sanchez's comments on that. This is almost precisely backwards. In fact, the bill for the first time explicitly authorizes and therefore entrenches in statute the bulk collection of communication records, subject to more or less the same rules already imposed by the FISA court. It endorses rather than prohibits what the NSA is already doing. Moreover, it imposes those restrictions only with respect to bulk collection of communications records, which is dangerous because it signals to the FISA court that Congress implicitly endorses the use of Section 215 to collect other records in bulk without comparable restrictions. The key phrase used, acquisition in bulk, incidentally, does not appear to be given any concrete definition. And that would be very typical of Congress because they always leave the definition missing. Like in the NDAA, the definition of a belligerent act, for which you can be imprisoned indefinitely until the end of hostilities and the war on terror. Their phrase, not mine. Perhaps most troubling, the bill contains a section stipulating that bulk orders for communication records may not acquire the content of any communications. That sounds good, right? The problem is, under canons of judicial interpretation, a narrow and explicit prohibition on getting content under bulk orders for communication records could easily be read to imply that content can be acquired via non-bulk order, or even via bulk order for other types of records. At present, it is not clear whether the statute allows for the acquisition of content under 215, but there are strong arguments it does not. I'd argue the Constitution would forbid this, even if the statute didn't. Under this law, a clever Justice Department lawyer could plausibly argue that a prohibition on content collection under one very specific type of 215 order would be senseless and redundant unless Congress intended for content to be accessible under 215 orders generally. And courts generally have to interpret the law in a way that avoids making any provision redundant. It's not all a hypothetical concern. In 2006, Congress amended Section 215 to add special, quote, protections for educational and medical records. What Congress didn't know is that because those records are already protected under other federal law, and 215 contained no language explicitly overriding those previous statutes, the Justice Department has already determined that 215 simply could not be used to access those types of records, an interpretation that was reversed after the protections were added. In other words, Congress inadvertently expanded the scope of 215 while trying to limit it. This fact was only discovered later when a report by the Inspector General revealed the unintended consequence of the amendment. Ladies and gentlemen, your representatives in Congress are working actively to subvert, betray, and undercut the liberties and the protections that were granted and given to us by our God, by nature, and delineated, elucidated, outlined, bullet-pointed in the Bill of Rights by our founders, by our Declaration of Independence, by our Constitution itself. They are corrupt beyond comprehension. They are bought and sold, traded amongst themselves, and we suffer at their hands. We are beyond salvage politically. And so we have no recourse but to begin to look at the real resolution to the problem. And that resolution will require each and every one of us to stand and be counted, to take an active, participatory role in restoring this nation, in pushing back the arms of tyranny. It's moving closer and closer and closer to us every single day. I've put out that phrase, which I think sums it up in total. I'm asking you to write it down. I'm asking you to put it at the bottom of your emails. I'm asking it for you to put it in your posts. I'm asking you for you to put this and write it on the back of your windshield in your car. Get a poster made up about it and put it everywhere you can. Not because I care to see my own words in writing, but because I think it succinctly explains where we need to be. It says, America, arise, be counted, be fearless, be fierce, be courageous and speak out, even when your voice shakes. We cannot sit silent any longer. We must stand. We must be counted. We must, like Hancock, write our names large and declare our never-ending battle against tyranny and treason. We have to state in solidarity with Jefferson that I will swear upon the altar of God eternal hostility against every form of tyranny. To do any less leaves us in a position of guilt. Guilt for failing. Guilt for failing to stand up and preserve that which is the last bastion of freedom on the planet. And if this pillar is knocked out, if this roof collapses, it doesn't collapse on just the United States. It will bring down the world into a period of darkness that the world has never even seen. Our leadership is working actively to destroy and injure us. We must arise. We must be counted. We must be fearless and fierce. We must be courageous. And we must speak out against tyranny, even when our voice shakes. You've been listening to America's Voice Now. We're going to take a quick break. When we return, we're going to tackle 3 other topics. 1, the top 10 excuses for the Obamacare terminations. It's kind of a litany of the excuses that we've been fed. Our 3rd segment is Obamacare security flaw. People are logging in, and one particular guy one guy in particular logged in and attempted to find out what his status was, and he got an approval letter that belonged to someone else. For real. He notified the guy who lived in another state. And the guy has come out with a statement that says, I want all my information. When I logged in, I registered, and I tried to use the system. And when I found out what the pricing was, I decided I wasn't going to do it. I'm just going to pay the penalty. And now his personal information has been revealed to another user who he doesn't even know. Our 4th segment is going to be on another executive order that's been signed by this traitor-in-chief. And it's calling for the United States to be prepared for the impact of global warming. Despite all of the contrary evidence out there, despite the fact that most climatologists who aren't biased are separating themselves and distancing themselves from the positions that have been thrown out there by the group of scientists who have been bought and paid for. Despite the fact that most nations of the world are recognizing that we are wasting our time and our money and that this is really just another form of global control, our president is signing a declaration, an executive order, to force this nation into doing things against its own best interest. That's dangerous territory. We'll be right back. You can find us by going to the web at americasvoicenow.org. You can also find posts which we do on America's Voice Now. You can find them on Facebook. You can join there. Go to facebook.com/America's Voice Now. And then you can also find every program that we do on YouTube by going to youtube.com/America's Voice Now. We also added a brand new podcasting function, which we'll be posting up on our website every day now. If you want to download those podcasts and listen to them on your own time on your cell phone or what have you, that's a great way to do it. And I hope that you'll take advantage of it. It's a brand new service we signed up for. So we'll be back in just a moment. Stick with us. You're listening to America's Voice Now.